Welcome back. All right, I'm wearing my WHA LA Sharks jersey because I'm not going to have a reason to wear this. I'm doing the season by season videos. I'm not planning on doing the season by season of the WHA again. I've covered that previously. I don't feel like there's a whole lot I can add to that. So I wanted to wear Sharks, and it kind of matches the THG hat. So today I want to rate general managers. Now, really, in all honesty, when you're rating general managers, there's going to be the recency bias. There's going to be the success bias. Like, well, that went pretty well, so that GM clearly did something right. And so there are some biases there. And while we talk about coaches being hired to be fired, general managers don't seem to have that long of a shelf life either. I mean, longer than a coach, but we definitely see some turnover with general managers. And then opinions will change from one year to the next about who the best general manager is. If I was doing this video back in 1999, I probably would have had Lou Lamoriello number one. Lamoriello kept the Devils in contention. They won cups in 95, 2000, 2003. Yeah, Lamoriello probably would have been number one. He does not make the top 10 in this list. So, that being said, preamble aside, number 10, yep. Now, there's a lot of debate about how well things have gone under Steve Yzerman, and I know people want this rebuild to be just finished. And why isn't it done yet? It's not that easy, especially when you do the full teardown. And so for the Red Wings, it's been a gradual build up. They really hit bottom, and it takes a while in a league of 32 teams to build your way back up. But they were close to the playoffs this past season. I do like what they've done in the offseason. I think Yzerman's done a good job, not just of making the team better, but stockpiling the team with young players and adding the right veterans at the right time. So to me, Yzerman is still a top 10 GM, but I do put him at number 10. And again, if I was doing this, say, 5 years ago when he was in charge, was it 5 years ago he was in charge in Tampa? It feels like it might have been longer than that. But, anyways, when he was Tampa Bay's GM, I might have had him at number one at that point. Number 9, for Colorado, the interesting thing is Chris McFarland is the general manager, but when I think about Colorado, I still think, well, their general manager is Sakic. Nope, it's McFarland. But McFarland's done a good job since Sakic moved up in the organization above general manager. I think McFarland's a really good GM, and I think the moves he's made this summer have been smart ones. Adding Shillington, adding Brandstrom for pennies on the dollar, and managing cap situations and all of that. I think Colorado's been quite good. You look at some of the contracts they've signed over the last few years, mostly pretty good contracts, and a team that wins the Stanley Cup in 2022 definitely helps when it comes to putting together a list of best general managers. Number 8, and I went back and forth a little bit on where I felt that Patrick Allvin should go. So Patrick Allvin has been very good when it comes to trades. And even the Lindholm trade, which a lot of people panned because Kuzmenko was very beloved by Canuck fans, and I get it. I hope he becomes a really, really excellent player consistently in Calgary. I wish him the best. But then in the playoffs, Lindholm was pretty good. And it definitely validated Alvin's decision to make that trade. Now, Lindholm's moved on, and I think that was the right move for the Canucks because it's $7.75 million dollars a year. That cap hit, I don't feel like that's something that would have worked with the Canucks structure. And people have blamed the Pettersson contract. I think if the Canucks had signed Lindholm to that contract, people would be piling on for that reason and saying, well, Lindholm's not worth that much. And so I think it's a no-win situation, personally. Number 7. So what's interesting is most of us will agree, I think, that Kent Hughes has done an excellent job with the rebuild thus far in Montreal. Their defense, so much depth, so many good young players. They've also started picking up those star forwards. Demidov could be a huge get for them in this past draft. And Hughes has not been one to make panicky moves. He's not trying to, have the Habs jump up in the standings. He's not going out and spending big money on big contracts and that kind of thing. He's just taking his time, and the methodical way in which the Montreal Canadiens are doing things, I think, is right. And it's interesting because it's not that dissimilar from what Yzerman's doing. It just feels like Montreal fans, I think the patience is there. We'll see for how long, but it feels like the patience is there. Number 6, and I know that there will be those who look at this one and go, well, Brisebois, remember he made the trade for Jeannot, and Brisebois let go of Steven Stamkos. That's a tough decision, letting go of Steven Stamkos, but Gensel is younger. He's a good scorer, and I give Brisebois credit for having that amount of courage to let a franchise player walk when you could just have re-signed him and had that feel-good moment for the fans, but it might have cost the team in the long run, right? So they get a little bit younger with Gensel, and the goal scoring is there, and I do like what Brisebois has done in general. Um, the team is still in contention. We can have the debate about how much of a contender they are at this stage, but I think that both Brisebois and Yzerman, for all of the negativity that they get at times, we have seen with Tampa Bay, they've been pretty darn good for a long time, and they are part of the reason why. Number 5 on the list, and honestly, I debated about having him this high up, but I think it's been a masterful job done already by Barry Trotz. When Barry Trotz took over Nashville last year, we thought they were rebuilding. And what I like with Barry Trotz is he came in with this mindset, and you could hear in the offseason interviews last year, he was okay with, yeah, all right, if we're rebuilding or retooling, that's okay. But he didn't sell off players. He didn't basically strip the roster down. And when the team was good, he was willing to add. He was willing to add this offseason too. And so Nashville finished 11th this past season in the overall standings. And I don't know that anybody saw that coming. So I think Barry Trotz deserves a lot of credit. It would have been easy for him to say, well, we'll trade Saros and we'll trade off other veterans and we'll retool for later. And he didn't. He's like, if we can be a playoff team now, why not be a playoff team now? So I like what Trotz has got done. I think the fact that the team had the salary cap space to add Stamkos and Marchessault shows they haven't looked for that quick fix in Nashville. But yeah, this could be a really good season for them coming up. Number 4, and not a general manager that I feel like gets as much credit as he should for how good his team is, and that's Chris Drury in New York. The Rangers have been in contention now for the last little while, and I think Drury deserves a lot of credit for that. We'll see if they stay in contention this year, but I think Chris Drury's done a really strong job with the New York Rangers, and full respect to him. I would give an honorable mention too to Danny Briere for the way he's running things right now in Philly and that rebuild. And those two players, former players, now GMs, I get them confused with each other a lot. So I thought I'd throw Danny Briere's name out there. But yeah, Drury, I think, has been good with the Rangers. And the big test for him is Shesterkin's contract, right? If Shesterkin ends up coming in at too high of a cap hit, or if they end up with some sort of cap trouble resulting from that, it means I may have to revise this soon enough. But at this point, I think he's done really well. Number 3. So people don't like how the Vegas Golden Knights do things. It's the LTIR, which again isn't against the rules. Vegas didn't go through the build that a first-year team normally does. First year, they win their division. They go to the Stanley Cup final. Hockey fans outside of Vegas fandom, not a big fan of the fact that Vegas hasn't really gone through those tough times that teams normally do. But that's because they've had good management. Yes, the expansion draft was a little bit more beneficial to them, but Seattle had the same rules, and then GM smartened up because Vegas fleeced so many GMs before the expansion draft had even happened, and then beyond and throughout that summer. And Kelly McCrimmon ended up getting the GM job there, and McPhee got bumped up. And the speculation was it was because McCrimmon was highly sought after by other teams, and they felt like giving McCrimmon the GM job in Vegas was the right move because they didn't want to lose him to another organization. And I'm not going to say that's wrong. And not only that, I think picking up Holtz, that could be a good value pick for them. Absolutely could. So, yeah, McCrimmon, full credit to him for how good Vegas has been. Number 2 is Jim Nill. Jim Nill has driven me crazy at times over the years, but it shows how a GM learns and they adapt. So when they had Lettinen and Niemi as their goaltending duo, I was very much concerned with that, and I wasn't a fan of that. But Nill's been smart since then. We haven't had a situation where the goaltending's been a major issue in Dallas for a while. Ottinger, they took their time with him. They made sure he was ready before he came up. Ottinger, one of the better young goaltenders in the NHL. And so, yeah, Jim Nill is number 2 on the list. If you're wondering where Don Sweeney is, if I'd gone to 15, Sweeney probably ends up on the list. But for this top 10, it is ruled by Bill Zito. I've seen comments about the Florida Panthers and how this offseason, well, they've lost something and this team's clearly not going to be as strong next year. But they didn't lose a real core piece from this Stanley Cup team. And they've added some players who may not look like they're going to be a big deal now. But when they picked up Forsling on waivers, nobody expected Forsling to develop the way he has. I like their pro scouting department. Clearly, they know who to add and when, and who to let go of as well. And I think that shows a really smart GM. I did not put Bill Zito at first because he has this really scary, angry face, and I was worried about what might happen if I didn't put him first. Had nothing to do with it. But all kidding aside, Bill Zito has proven himself to be a fantastic general manager with Florida. And right now, I would rate him the best general manager in the NHL. But this is highly subjective. Everybody has a different opinion on who the good GMs are and the bad GMs. It makes for an entertaining discussion. I may do one on coaches as well. Stay tuned. But for general managers, that's who I would have in the top 10. And again, this changes dramatically from one season to the next. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.